They're saying that they have seen crime quadruple in the last years. They're tired of corruption, and this time around they want to vote for another party.
All right, Teresa Bo, live for us in Caracas. Thank you.
For more on the Venezuelan election, we are now joined by George Chicarello Maher, a writer and an activist. He spent the past year teaching in Caracas and has been involved in leftist politics there. He joins us from San Francisco in California. Thanks for joining us, sir.
Thanks for having me.
As we heard there from our correspondent, the opposition parties could get something like 3 to 6 states. Is that a valid prediction, or do you believe that Chavez might lose even more?
Oh, I think that's a reasonable prediction. What you can look for is the opposition to maintain the 2 states that they currently control and possibly, I think, pick up 1 or 2 more. But this has got less to do, I think, with overall support for Chavez than it has to do with the specific politics of the states and the electoral issues that have come to the fore regarding the new PSUV party and whether or not unity candidates for the opposition or the Chavistas have come to run against each other, or if you've really got a divided vote among several candidates.
Chavez suffered something of an electoral defeat in 2007. That was during that referendum, which would have allowed him to seek re-election indefinitely. Has he rebounded? Has his popularity rebounded since then?
I mean, certainly the opposition got a bit of a bump last December with the very, very narrow defeat of the constitutional reform referendum. But what's important to bear in mind was that this was not a victory for the opposition so much as it was an actual loss by the Chavistas, a failure to mobilize the radical base that has been supporting Chavez for all these years. The base was not mobilized, was not interested in a lot of what was going on in the constitutional reform proposal. One thing that's interesting, though, is that if it were a vote simply on re-election for Chavez, he would have won. So if it were just on the question of the indefinite re-election, then he certainly would have won. What it was a complex proposal based on 69 measures, some of which were very unpopular.
Do you believe that this current election will be open, transparent and fair?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think with all of the attention that has been placed on Venezuelan elections in past years, what has been developed is really one of the most transparent electoral systems in the world, and even the opposition admits this. And this is something that's not really discussed very much outside of Venezuela, but the opposition did not challenge the last election and was observing all of the electoral procedures.
Is this election in some way a referendum, really, on Chavez's long-term plans? In fact, his plan for turning Venezuela into a socialist state, into getting more state involvement in the country's economy?
On the one hand, I would say that that's true. The difficulty with that, though, is that when electing local leadership, this is sort of a filter through which that support for socialism must be read. And local leadership is essentially the Chavistas' Achilles heel, because many people support Chavez, but they don't support their mayors and they don't support their governors, or they view them as potentially corrupt and opportunistic figures who are not interested in anything aside from their own power. So it's difficult to judge. On the one hand, it will reflect the desire of people to push forward with socialism, and Chavez needs this vote in order to push forward more radically. But on the other hand, it also reflects the difficulties that it represents, reflect people's hostility to their local candidacies.
All right, so we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Staying in the Americas, the 3rd largest oil supplier to the United States has produced nearly